Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vandia's back in another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile space. Joy, don't like, comment, subscribe, and start, shall we? This time we're covering Dark States, Drajeweled. So, okay, finally, I think I finally said his name right, let's go. But anyways, Drajeweled, I literally just did my first match with this deck. It was on camera, it's going up on Wednesday, but I gotta say, it's actually really good. I enjoyed that match. I didn't think I would enjoy Drajeweled as much as I did, but I enjoyed it. I love the soul fuckery. I love the bouncing in between souls. It felt like I could actually use the deck. Again, I say, first time I used that deck, and I felt really in tune with it. So let's go ahead and get this started, and you can see what's in this deck, and you might be able to see why I felt so in tune with it. So first up, we have our starter in Jewelias Dracokid. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Auto run upon if you want second draw card. Standard starter build, nothing special about it. It's just a draw, and that's pretty much it. I do like it though. It looks really cool. I like his wing design. I like how he's kind of like an edgy little child all around. He looks pretty amazing. Jewelias Dracokid is our starter. You can use any starter you want because none of them really require him, but yeah, you might as well run the whole Jewel Dragon line, why don't you? Then we have our Overtrigger, Hades Dragon, Deity of Resentment, Gallmageheld, Grade 0 boost, 50 shield, 5k power, Overtrigger, then 1 Overtrigger deck, and reveals your trigger. Move that card, draw a card, choose one of your plus 1 million for the turn, and if you revealed it during draw check, activate additional effect, which is during your turn, you, the player, get during your turn, all your Vanguards get plus 10k and a crit ton to fight. So that basically means your Vanguard will always be, at the very least, swinging for a 15k drop, and will always have an extra critical on it, which is really good because that always applies extra pressure to the opponent. Now, my thing with this is, personally, I don't think you actually need overtriggers in this deck, believe it or not. Like, okay, you need them in the sense that, okay, let me rephrase that in a way you people might be able to. I need to stop because now it sounds like I'm insulting people. Okay, what I mean by this is outside of the extra, I guess, 5th heal that it counts as, I don't think you need this because Drajewel drops your opponent down to 1k, and I have never needed to see this overtrigger to almost push them for game. The overtrigger wouldn't have made the difference if I saw it. A trigger in general would have made the difference if I saw it. The overtrigger, no. So like, in this deck, me personally, I think you just need an overtrigger for the 5th heal, and you don't need to worry about like drive checking it or damage checking it, because quite literally, I haven't needed to. Yes, I didn't win a game because I didn't sack a trigger, but that would have been any trigger would have won me the game. This wouldn't have made the difference. So all-around Gallmageheld is the preferred overtrigger though, just because like it makes the Vanguard column far more dangerous after you drop your opponent down to 1k, and it gives that extra crit pressure, and Albari really isn't needed. I mean, if you want to run Albari because, you know, bigger numbers on the big 2 other rear guards, and so be it, but I do prefer Gallmageheld just because it's cool. Then we have our normal triggers. 3 copies of the draw trigger, Rouse, Wildmaster, Riley, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Draw taking to his guard circle of your opponent's Vanguard trigger, 3 grade, you get plus 5k shield. Cool, so 10k shield. That helps, especially because the Vanguard's already pushing for a lot, so they have to drop a lot of hand cards. So Riley, personally to me, doesn't need to be at a lot of copies, because you can get a hand card pretty easily in this deck. So 3 of them is fine enough, like extra guard in case they went first, or they managed to survive a massive push, and they're pushing back even bigger. But I only think draw triggers need to be at 3 of. 4 copies of Steam Deviate Dragon, this is a definite yes. This is the one time I've remembered to actually use his skill, and that's because it's very important that I do for grades. So grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k base, critical trigger, auto rear. At the end of the battle, he boosted, put him to soul, choose one of your units, plus 2 for the turn. So the 2 is not that helpful. The 2 doesn't really do much, but the extra, so actually no, in this deck the 2 does, because it increases the number ever so slightly. So anyways, Steam Deviate is really good though. He gets you a soul, and that's why you run him. Like, you don't run him just to get the soul, because the soul count doesn't matter anymore. As long as you have 4 different grades, that's the important part. The thing that he's used for is to get the 4 different grades, because there are multiple ways to swap soul in this deck and get different grades in soul, but the hardest one to get, quote unquote, is grade 0s, because everyone else can kind of send normal units to soul. Grade 0s, however, have the way to send themselves to soul via stuff like Steam Deviate. So that's what Steam Deviate's here for. So why waste time switching other units in and out of soul via skills? I can just use Steam Deviate to get my grade 0. So around Steam Deviate's really good. I like him. He gets me that soul when I remember to use him. All around good crit, 4 of. Then we're on 4 copies of the front trigger Huckle Hustle. I don't need to kill my opponent on first grade 3 turn. Like, I enjoy not killing them on first grade 3 turn, because they're already pressured into guarding, and I can just abuse whatever board they have with like massive numbers while they're too busy trying to survive. So I don't really need the extra crits to kill them. If you want to run the extra crits in place of this, you can. But in the cases where I don't have the ability to use a skill, because that did almost happen once, it didn't, but it almost happened. Huckle Hustle really helps out, gives me the front row 10k, so even if I can't lower their power, I can still force out a good amount of drops, and if I can force the number down to 1, it's essentially game unless they have 3 PGs at the ready. So 4 copies of Huckle Hustle. She's really good, and she's actually just a good front. If you're wondering why I'm not running the Diablos front, it's because it's a Diablos card. Not saying anything against Diablos, because you know Diablos is one of my favorite Dark States decks, if not my favorite until this deck came out now. But yeah, it's a Diablos card, and I don't want to mix archetypes. So 4 of Huckle, and then 4 copies of Steam Scarra Manager. We all know I don't like the new heals. They're very situational. They are okay as is, but like I'm not gonna run them. So 4 of Manager. It's just a good heal. Then we have our grade 1s, finally. This is the longest I've taken to get to the grade 1s. So first up, 3 copies of Invoker of Thunder Fullgress. Like, this is the most important grade 1 in my opinion to this deck. So grade 1 boost 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when it's placed on rear if you have a Vanguard that is Drajeweled in its card name. So it can be any of the grade 3, the grade 2, the grade 1. So even at the grade 0 if you manage to call it during... Actually, no, it wouldn't work on the grade 1. Actually, now that I think about it, the grade 2 and the grade... Give me a second, I need to check this real quickly. Sorry, you can use it on the grade 1, you can't use it on the grade 2, but you can use it on the grade 3. So anyways, his skill is when placed on rear, if your Vanguard is Drajeweled, Soul Blast 1, choose a card from draw, put it to Soul, and this unit gets +2 for the turn. Cool. So not only is that really good support for Chaos, because, you know, he can swap the souls around for different names, but you can also do it for Drajeweled and for different grades, so you can Soul Blast a grade you have duplicate of. What I like to do is I like to get a total of 3 grades of a certain, like... When I know I'm going to get one more grade than another, I try to get it to 3 so I can consistently make it so I can do that 1 grade twice, once this turn, once the next turn, and then I can do the 3rd one as a sacrificial meal to swap out for another grade, such as a grade 0 or a grade 3 or a grade 2 I haven't dropped. For some reason, I end up having an excess of grade 1s in Soul, so that's what Fullgress is for. He just swaps out the grade 1s for other grades. All around, Fullgress is really good. Grade swapper. Gets slight numbers because that 2k has actually won me a game before, and not to mention the fact that he's all around just a good grade 1, and I like him for that support alone, so I give him a 3-0 just for that reason. Then we have 3 copies of Mysterious Fairy Lyn. She is definitely helpful in the early game when I'm trying to rush my opponent down. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when it's placed on rear, look at the top 2, choose 1 card from among them, put it to Soul, and choose the other card and put it to bottom. So downside is you have to pick one. Upside is you basically can send anything to Soul you want, which is good for those different grades you can get. All around, Lyn is definitely really good in the early game. I feel in this deck it's very important to rush them, get them to 3 damage, and then use Drajeweled to push them to 1, because that means if especially if you went first, because then what you can do is you can take advantage of the fact that they're already at 3 and push them, and they're forced to guard with so much, especially if you see a crit, to the point where like you already controlling the game just from getting to grade 3 first. And if you went second, then that's even better, because then you have the pressure on the Vanguard with the extra crit. So all around, Lyn is really good for the early rush. Stacks the top 2. I mean, not stacks them, but like gets Soul not once per turn. She is literally always gotten me exactly what I needed to Soul, and she's always the thing that gets me the excess grade for Fullgress. So all around, she's definitely main playmaker of this deck for me personally. I like her a lot. I give her a 3 of. Also, as you can see, this deck is like a mixture of set 5 and a set... Well, not set 5 yet. You'll see the set 5 card, but set 5 in the trial deck. Then we have 4 copies of the PG Recusal Dragon. Now, I did not struggle to build most of this deck, except for this. Because I sat there for a good 2 minutes. Granted, it's only 2 minutes, but still. I sat there for 2 minutes and thought to myself, do I really need this PG? Because I wanted to run more Soul Chargers. So I asked myself, do I need the PG? And I took it out. I did take it out, and then I put the card I was going to place it within, and then before I used the deck, I was like, you know what? Maybe I will need that PG, and I put the PG back in, and what do you know? The PG ended up winning me a game, so it's a fair thing. So anyways, the PG grade 1 boost, 0 shield, 6k base, continues set on before sounds in deck, and auto is put on guard circle, choose one of your, it cannot be into battle, and if you had 2 or more hand cards, when you would do this, you choose a card from your hand, discard it. So, basically, what that means is if you only had one card in hand, or one other card in hand when you would play this, so it was this and something else, and you put it on guard circle, you don't have to discard, which is really nice, because that basically means you get to play as aggressively as you want, which is really good in this deck, because like I said before, you want to rush your opponent down early, and that means you'll be able to be a little bit cautious with the PG, but still be as aggressive as possible, because I definitely know, based off what I was doing, I got down to like 3 hand cards very quickly, and that was kind of scary, especially when the opponent was going first. So all around, PG, I want to say is needed. I did debate about it hardly, but I did end up going with the PG. If you want to get rid of the PG, I would suggest putting in that one trial deck card, the one that's like on boost you may soul charge, because that's what I was going to replace it with, because it's not a mandatory soul charge, and it would activate right before Drajeweled skill goes off. So yeah, Rescue Hate is my choice, but otherwise run that card out of 4 of. So either way, Rescue Hate 4 copies. Then we have 2 copies in the main deck and 1 copy in the right deck of our final grade 1 Jewel Core Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when he's rode upon by Demonic Stone Dragon, Jewelneel, calm to rear guard circle. Okay, when rode upon by a specific grade 2, he calls himself, so that's fine. And auto rear, when this unit attacks or boosts into anything, can be a van or rear, he gets +5 for the battle, and at the end of the battle, shove him to soul. It is a mandatory effect. So downside is you're losing the rear guard you just called. Upside is he's a 13k swing. This is what my important moment of multi-attacking was. I just called one to the front row, called one behind him, behind the vanguard, called this, called another grade 2, and I just rushed face, forced them to drop guard so that they didn't go to 3 damage because I know how dangerous I could be on Drajeweled. So yeah, all around Jewel Core was genuinely a really helpful card. His number pushing that 5k genuinely made the difference of the 5k drops, especially when I was on Drajeweled and forced them to go to 1k. And not to mention just the early game rush was really good. I do think Jewel Core is definitely one of the grade ones you want to run in the main deck, so I run him at a 2 in the main deck, especially because he can jump to soul during the battle phase. So if I don't have a grade 1 somehow for Drajeweled skill, he'll end up going to soul before. Granted, he will go in before. I would have to swing with that column before I swing with Drajeweled, but still, that's fair. And he just works in the early game. So 2 in the main deck, 1 copy in the right deck of Jewel Core Dragon. Then move on to grade 2s. 2 copies of Indicate Arrow Dragon. I have not needed him yet, but I have shoved him in here on the excuse that he will come in useful when he needs to. So Indicate Arrow is a grade 2 with intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Auto, when he's placed on rear, reveal the top card. If you have no soul cards with the same name as the revealed card, you may soul charge it. If you don't, I believe it stays at the top. So the good news to him is he basically gets you a free soul charge if you don't have the same name, which granted is not as important as it is in Chaos, but a lot of cards with different names happen to be of different grades, so the fact that he will be able to give me a soul charge is really nice, especially because I'm constantly soul blasting 4 each turn, so the chances of me hitting a card with a different name are very high, especially with a lot of my cards doing selective stacking. Like, this one sends a lot of stuff to bottom, so I know at some point I will hit a card that isn't in the soul, and Indicate will give me a free soul charge, so that's really nice. He does it for free, he doesn't cost counterblast, he doesn't cost discards, he doesn't cost soul blast. All around, he's a really nice grade 2. I like him. My thing is he's a little bit luck based and he's not exactly what this deck needs, but he's there just in case I do need that extra soul charge to get me through, so I give him a 2 of Indicate Arrow. But the fact I haven't needed him yet is proof enough that this deck is consistent on its own. Then we have 3 copies of Selfish Engraver. I cannot build a Dark State set without having her. She is my favorite grade 2 in this deck game. Grade 2 intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Well, not in this game, but in Dark States at least. Auto rear when she attack hits, soul charge 1. Okay, that's never going to hit. That is absolutely never going to hit. And frankly, the second skill will never ever go off. But it's good because it adds on hit pressure, especially when your opponent knows that you are severely lacking of a grade in soul. Like, I will purposely leave myself with 1 grade 3 in soul because I know I can make up for it. So I will make it so that they have to guard Selfish Engraver because they don't want to risk me getting a grade 3 in soul and then proccing off it. So they have to guard Selfish Engraver because the on-hit soul charge could possibly kill them. And then auto rear at the end of the battle they attack. If your soul has 10 or more cards, never going to happen. If you're playing this deck the way it's intended to be, with this exact build, you're never going to hit 10 cards in Soul while she's on the board. Soul Nintendo Soul, Counter Rush 1. I mean, you could if you really did the early rush, because I could have done it. The thing is, you don't need to. The deck doesn't use up nearly enough counterblast for that to be worth it, and it's not worth the extra soul charge. Like, this deck never has had a grade 2 getting in soul problem. It's never had a problem getting grade 1s in soul. My main problems of getting grades in soul were grade 0s when I didn't think I needed to use a grade 0 in grade 3s, but that's why I run Time Jarett. So, 3 copies of Selfish Engraver. She's just good, and I like her number. Then we have 4 copies of Ultrasound Siren. So, grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Auto, when it's placed on rear, counter from hand, by the way. Counter boss 1, look at top 3, choose 1 card from among them, put it to your soul, and shuffle the remaining back into your deck. And if there are 4 or more different card names in soul, draw a card. Okay. So really good if you've been if you rode this at grade 2 and you have a lot of soul already. It can do with different card names, or if you're on grade 3, because remember, Drajeweled doesn't cost counterboss, which is one of my favorite things about him. That means I can just use whatever I want with Siren. So the fact that she can get a draw possibly is really good, but also the fact that in the early game she can quickly get you a free soul for setup is nice. This is what I typically use to hit grade 3s off of, because like I say, Steam Deviate kind of goes to soul by himself, and I always see him in my hand. If you don't always see a Steam Deviate, or you don't have a Steam Deviate in hand when you use her and you see a trigger, just get rid of the trigger. At some point, I did get rid of a heal for her skill, so I don't really mind you losing triggers for her if it's just for the overall benefit of the deck, even if it is just a heal. And all around, she is just a good card. Like, she gets me the soul I need when I need it. Not to mention she's a counterblast, which is a callus that the deck doesn't really use that much of. And not to mention she can get me a draw if I had the 4 different names. So all around, Ultrasound's really good. She's a nice grade 2. I like her. Good for the early game rush that I normally do. So 4 of. Then we have one copy in the ride deck, no copies in the main deck of our final grade 2 and our main grade 2, Demonic Stone Dragon Jewelneel. God, I love his art. I love his blue hair. I love his like purple arms. I love everything about him. I just wish his skill made me want to run him in the main deck, because I wanted to run him over Incade, but he doesn't have a skill I believe is worth running, so not going to run him in the main deck, but still run him in the ride deck. So his skill is Auto Vanderweer when his attack hits a Vanguard Soul Charge 1, so it's just like Selfish Engraver. That's why I don't run him in the main deck. He's just a worse Selfish Engraver, because she at least will get me a counter charge if I ever get to that point where I need it, and I happen to have that 10 soul. He'll just give me a soul charge, so why run him when I just have Selfish Engraver do the job for me? And then Auto, when it's wrote upon by a unit with Drajeweled in its card name, it says that because there is an alternate Drajeweled. We're not getting that yet, we're getting it in set 7, but when that time comes, soul charge 1, and if your soul has 3 or more cards with different grades, soul draw a card. Okay. With how I play this deck, that'll always be the case, because it counts himself, it counts this, which inevitably ended up back in Soul if you play it how I do, and you definitely have your starters still in Soul, so free draw. And even if that's not the case, I typically have the 3 Soul for that, because typically from this skill, I end up Soul charging another Drajeweled. I don't know why Drajeweled himself hates me, but literally all the games I've played with it, I have not been able to Persona Ride. That one game on camera, I lost 3 copies of it to the damage zone. My first 3 damages were all Drajeweleds. I don't know what the fuck that dragon has against me, but it has something against me. Either way, it's good. It gets you that draw, which always goes off for me, so that's really nice. It gets the hand cards back from the rush that you committed, and not to mention on the grade 2 turn where you're getting your soul charge, it puts pressure on the opponent's Vanguard when you're swinging for 23 to their 50 for a 15k block with a possible soul charge coming out of it. So around good grade 2. I love its ride line skill. I think its skill is really good. I just wish it wasn't just a second, worse version of Selfish Engraver. So, all around, 1 copy in the ride deck, no copies in the main deck of Demonic Stone Dragon Jewelneel, one of my favorite grade 2s. Then we move on to our grade 3s. 3 copies of Time Jarett Dragon. He is here for one specific reason. Get grade 3s in Soul. There is no other reason. If you see this card, get a grade 3 in Soul. Like I said, never have had a problem with getting grade 2s in Soul. Never have had a problem with getting grade 1s in Soul. Grade 1s are the easiest. Grade 2s are second easiest. Grade 0s... if I don't have a Steam Deviate, then I'll use Time Jarett for it. And grade 3s, this is where Time Jarett really comes in, because he gets the grade 3s in Soul. So Time Jarett, grade 3, 200% 13k base. Auto is placed on rear, put a hand card to Soul, draw a card. Not only does he get different grades in Soul, he gets you a draw to replace the unit you sent to Soul, and because you're not hyper Soul charging, you're not going to deck out from this. Like I said, typically I send a grade 3 to Soul if I have a grade 3 in hand. If I don't, I will take this chance to send a heal trigger to Soul, because typically I've either Soul charged a grade 3 at this point and I don't have a grade 3 in hand because it went to Soul, or I have Soul charged a trigger and I don't have an extra grade 3, because I like to have 2 at all times, so I'm aware that I don't have to waste time next turn doing some stupid plays, so everyone can get maximum power out of the opponent being at 1k. So 3 of Time Jarett, he's really good. He doesn't cost Counter Boss, he doesn't cost Soul Blast, he gets my soul up, he gets me a draw to replace the card he gets rid of, and not to mention he just gets me combos because he gets things I need in Soul for his skills to go off. So around 3 copies of Time Jarett. He is an important grade 3 in this deck. I do run him out of 3 just for the different names, just in case for Indicate Arrow, but he's still a pretty good grade 3. Then we have 3 copies of Trachlance Raider. Now, let's just say this. Let's just say Time Jarett's here for the consistency. Time Jarett, Trachlance over here is here because, 1, he's cool as hell, and 2, numbers for the attack. So he's a grade 3 twin drive Persona Ride 13k base. Auto rear, when he attacks, if your Vanguard is a Drajeweled, or if it has Drajeweled in its card name, counter boss 1 until end of battle, he'll get +10. At the end of the battle, shove him to Soul. So, he acts as a grade 3 in Soul, so worst case scenario, if I have to swing with him before Drajeweled, I can, and he'll still be swinging for at least 823, probably with an 8k booster, so 31k swing. All around, I just gotta say I really like this card. He definitely works for the power gain, and not to mention on the turns where I do use Drajeweled before I use him, he definitely can be an endgame user, so all around, I like him. I think he's good. 3 of. Then we have our last card in the deck, our main grade 3, Jewel Embracing Dragon Fang, Drajeweled. Grade 3 twin drive Persona Ride 13k base, 3 copies in the main deck, 1 copy in the ride deck. All 3 copies got damage checked. I don't know why. I think this card just genuinely hates me, but whatever. Can't escape me now that we have the ride deck. Aha, that's what this is for. So anyways, continues when he would be wrote upon is also regarded as Cursed Gem Dragon Drajeweled, so that's a confirmation that our new grade 3 that we're getting for him will basically be that. So good news is we get a free Persona Ride, so we might not want to run him in the ride deck, but who knows, considering the fact that you say it works on either ride deck, that it might have a good skill for it, or it might just have a good skill for Persona Ride. Either way, The important part is his second skill. So Auto Van, when he attacks a Vanguard, Soul Blast 4 cards of different grades, choose an opponent's Vanguard, until end of turn, increase or decrease its power to 1, and if your opponent's Vanguard was grade 3 or greater when you did this, he gets +1 critical, and his power becomes 1, and the power is decreased afterwards. So all around, that's really good. He not only increases his critical to be a little bit more deadly to his opponent if they were at grade 3 when you did this, but it also decreases the opponent's power for the whole turn, which is really good because if you had to swing first with another rearguard, say for example this to get the grade 3 install and they sacked the over trigger, you can drop them down to 1k, making it easier for this attack to go through and the other attack to go through, while also just, if you swing with this first, you have 3 attacks headed in with your opponent probably dying to them. And not to mention, if you got lucky enough to Persona Ride, even though this thing hates me not to let me Persona Ride, you can kind of just swing for game at this point. Like, they're at 1k. They don't have to be a grade 3 for you to do this. The grade 3 just gives the extra crit benefit. Rush them down, bring them to 5 damage. Next turn, they're probably dead, because they've probably dropped enough hand cards trying to survive this. So all around, Drajeweled really good. And then we have our last skill, which contains rearguard. If you Soul Blaster 4 more cards at the same time for the cost of your card's ability, this turn he gets +5. So it doesn't have to be for his ability per se, but it has to be 4 cards at the very least. So you could actually shove him in Bruce and do it, because Bruce Soul Blast 5 at the same time, but not really a good idea. All around, Drajewel's really good. He gets the numbers, well, he doesn't actually get numbers outside of his rearguard skill, but he drops the opponent down to so low to the point where you actually are getting numbers, and he's just a terrifying thing to be dealt with. So all around, I like him. I think he's an amazing grade 3. I love his art. I love his skill. I love the feel he gives me of the deck. I give him a 4 of. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, it's very interesting. Like, I love the fact that I get to screw around with the soul. I've consistently been able to, like, get Drajeweled skill off twice. And I say twice because the game's only ever lasted 2 grade 3 turns for both of us. He can get calls, he gets a superior call at grade 2, you can do a really good rush turn, you can, once you get to grade 3, if you're going second, you can punish them by like pushing them and getting rid of so much of their hand, and if you're going first, you can punish them while they're at grade 2, push them for such big numbers, and then force them to struggle to survive when they hit grade 3. All around, I love Drajeweled. The deck being able to constantly be able to do the Soul Blast 4 is really cool. I like the design of them, I like the aesthetic, I like everything about it. I think it's amazing, and I love this deck. I really enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and I cannot wait for Sex 6 to give us more support. So without further ado, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you on this one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.